I went into Anthem hoping to find an unexpected gem, the game that puts BioWare back on the map after Mass Effect Andromeda. Instead, I discovered a fairly ordinary shooter with a lackluster story arc that, while looking nice, didn't get me very excited. Anthem has some good ideas and some fun gameplay, but overall, just didn't pan out for me. In my playtime, I saw flashes of brilliance from Anthem, be it exploring the jaw-dropping Avatar-inspired world, the world-class voice acting, the beautiful music, or the superb flight suit mechanics that just feel right.
That's done it. The marker's been triggered.
Even the combat at first can feel mesmerizing with the right group of friends, a weighty combination of high-powered weapons and over-the-top neon abilities. But when I started to peel back the layers deeper, a solemn reality quickly set in, and that is that Anthem isn't all that it could be. Hey freelancers, this is the first of 2 videos reviewing Anthem. Part 1 will be a general analysis of Anthem based off about 25 hours of the game, a sort of introductory video / buyer's guide if you will. I've completed all the story content, the main missions, and the Strongholds, which is the basis for my discussion today. You can expect Part 2, an official review of the game, when I complete Grandmaster difficulty content very soon. So for now, let us answer one fundamental question: should you buy Anthem today? Anthem is a third-person shooter that tries to be 2 different and unique games, but doesn't succeed at either of them all that well. On one hand, it wants to be a story-centric game. The Phantom of BioWare is lingering somewhere in here, but it just feels very restrained. Anthem does feature all the necessary trimmings that you'd expect from the company: a city hub, NPCs, quests, crafting, character progression, dialogue, and a main story as well, sadly spanning no more than 8 to 10 hours, however. On the other hand, Anthem doesn't do much with any of it though, under-delivering on many of the core principles of handcrafted RPGs in favor of what I can only describe as a semi-satisfying looter-shooter. Unfortunately for the RPG fan out there, the story of Anthem isn't engaging and borderline is very cliche, boring, and trite. By the 2-hour mark, I wanted it to end. In fact, the only time I was ever engaged or hooked was on the last mission, the very last mission, but by then I had all but checked out. Anthem's classic good versus evil story isn't going to win any awards and is simply a collection of missions cobbled together with little heed to consistency or scale. The game begins with a ho-hum tutorial mission. It's pretty boring, and players are expected to continue that journey by following a main quest objective, while at the same time participate in a whole bunch of side missions and repeatable content for EXP. Players puddle around Fort Tarsis, which is a cluttered, poorly designed city hub best described as a fantasy-inspired San Francisco Chinatown, between missions. The city is claustrophobic at best and aggravating to navigate at worst, with NPCs scattered around at what seems to be complete random. It certainly looks nice, but from a playability standpoint, it's more hassle than anything. Fort Tarsis is a discombobulated, cluttered mess, but players spend most, if not all, of their downtime here during the campaign, talking to NPCs and lumbering through a long list of loading screens and cluttered menus for simple items like the shop and forge, so you better get used to this city. In fact, the loading screens are always a problem, coming in waves during a single mission. The worst is when you load in during the middle of a mission with quick play, wherein you may get 2 loading screens back to back if your squad transitions into a new area objective when you spawn in.
Amazing news. You're 5th in line for the throne of Anthem.
In terms of presentation, dialogue in Anthem at times is serviceable, but it can verge on the side of cringy.
He looks friendly. Does he though?
Nothing but meat and potatoes behind that shield. Stagger them and then dig in.
Interesting metaphor.
Well, I'm hungry.
Can we not talk about food right now?
With such a celebrated cast of voice actors, the problem isn't the delivery, but it's the writing. It's straight bad. The great irony of Anthem is that it encompasses nothing that BioWare does best, such as a riveting cast of well-developed characters, great dialogue that's well-written, interesting, and relevant to the story. Instead, conversations in Anthem play out more like casual street chats, and even the main freelancer that you play lacks urgency necessary to make players care. This transitions directly into how the story plays out as well via gameplay. In Anthem, players are forced into a routine. Grab a quest, go to your javelin, sit through a loading screen that takes an eternity, and follow some quest markers to your objective. Thankfully, you can disable most of these HUD indicators in the options menu though. You do whatever the game asks you to do, be it defend against waves of enemies, collect a relic, or help an NPC find a friend. Once that's done, the game will generally ask you to fly to another location and do it all over again. Mission complete. Afterwards, the game will teleport you back to Fort Tarsis instantly so that you may sit through yet again another lengthy loading screen before grabbing your next mission. It's the same damn mission structure throughout the entire game. At no point during the campaign did I ever feel like I was playing anything revolutionary or exciting. But of course, it sure looked nice, so I guess there's that.
Take a look around for the control mechanism.
On the rare occasion that the game provided a major story moment with a pre-rendered cutscene, I actually felt my pulse jump a beat. These moments of theatrics show Anthem at its best, though they be too few and far between. Because for the majority of the story arc, it's predictable, repetitive, uninspired. As a result, there's no sense of escalation to Anthem, no immediacy to the conflict at all, especially due to several gating mechanisms that are only here to inflate game time and cause inconvenience. These level traps are the worst part of Anthem, namely a quest called the Tomb of the Legionnaires. Around the 4 or 5 hour mark, EA presents this absurd quest to the player which can best be described as a list of tedious bitch work. After playing through a third of the game, players must complete a checklist of no less than 16 boring objectives such as finding collectibles, reviving teammates, opening treasure chests, or completing contracts. It was at this moment I felt all momentum for the story crash, as it was an obvious move to pad out the game's total playtime by making players' lives literal hell. It took me like 3 hours to find all the collectibles, and that was just one part of the quest, which are hidden around the free play mode with no indication of where they may be. Should have looked up a guide on YouTube. So much for creating that gripping narrative. The real shame is that the villain of the game, the Monitor, has great screen presence yet only receives a few minutes in the spotlight. Why?
We don't need to be enemies, Freelancer. You think I even give one damn about the Cenotaph or the Heart of Rage?
Why BioWare decided to limit the most interesting character of the game to only a handful of lines of dialogue is straight perplexing. Granted, towards the end of the game, finally, Anthem tries to create some sort of tension, and at that point it feels like it's getting exciting. A climax starts to heat up, but before you know it, the game's over, and I was left feeling disappointed. The worst part about the entire questing experience is that the game creates so many inconveniences to the player while going through it. Fort Tarsis is a pain to get around. Loading screens, they're everywhere. Conversations with NPCs are so long-winded that you would sooner skip them than truly figure out what anyone has to say. It's just so dull. None of the cast is interesting, not the least of which is Owen, who is downright one of the most annoying characters to date in a BioWare game. There's really nothing to break down here. The dialogue is either overdramatic or ironically uninspired, yet it's all glazed in a hornet's nest of corny jokes. Worst of all, there's no player choice in Anthem. There's no major decisions to make. In fact, you don't get to make any dialogue choices at all in the main campaign. The only time you're given an option to do so is during a contract or an agent mission, but still, it means nothing in the end anyway. You can do or say nothing that has any impact whatsoever in any aspect of Anthem. One could counter this by saying that this is primarily a looter shooter, but I'd counter back by saying it's also an RPG with a mandatory campaign, one that BioWare requires you to spend around 20 hours to get the level cap. So in the end, I was praying for the story to end, the characters to stop talking, and for Anthem to release its in-game content to me that it was holding hostage. Unfortunately, when I did, I quickly discovered that Anthem's late-game content is not only lacking, but some of it is downright recycled. After completing the final mission, which as I said earlier is actually fun and exciting, players are granted passage into Anthem's last 2 strongholds. But what if I told you that one of them is a 1-to-1 copy of that last mission? Yeah, this stronghold is simply the final mission of Anthem on repeat. So technically, you could say that there's not 2 strongholds when you finish the campaign, there's only one new one. When I discovered this, the disappointment was real. I understand at this point that it sounds like I'm ragging on Anthem, but hey, the story sucks and it'd be a crime to say that it doesn't. Now, let's talk about the actual moment-to-moment content. In terms of raw gameplay, Anthem is at times fun. Anthem's combo of intense shooting and abilities makes the game enjoyable in the moment. Anthem has a system of primers and detonators, which can be used to set up combos for big damage, and utilizing them carefully can mean a huge deal. These abilities are fully customizable in the Forge menu, which again does require a loading screen to get to no matter where you are, another player disturbance. Using these combos in Anthem is required at high difficulties, and it does feel great to be in a group where everyone is working together using combos in unison. This is Anthem at its best. I like the combat in Anthem, and hard fights require tactics, flying, abilities, shooting, cover, and more to get through. The game always keeps you moving. But gameplay can also be a bit clusterfucky. Anthem is an incredibly screen-busy game, and it can be difficult to decipher exactly what the hell is happening sometimes with all the neon barf pouring all over the screen. It certainly looks nice, but with the amount of high-def explosions and hit scans and everything on the screen, sometimes all at once, it's easy to get disoriented or let alone communicate with your team. The down system also needs taking a look at, as when you go down in this game, you can't spectate your team, nor is it easy for them to spot you. It'd be nice if Anthem just had better indicators for this kind of stuff, and a ping system to keep groups more organized, especially in Strongholds where it's impossible to tell what your teammates are actually aiming at. Strongholds, in terms of content, are essentially longer forms of content players have already experienced with a few small tweaks. Players are required to kill enemies while moving around the dungeons and completing the tasks set upon them. Unfortunately, it's about the same as any other quest, be it defending against a wave of bad guys or collecting something and bringing it back to designated location X. The only difference here is that there's some sort of boss at the end of the road. While they can be fun in groups, after completing my 8th run of each, I was getting pretty bored. For me, the bosses aren't terribly interesting either, or have any context, unless you dive into the journal to find out why you're actually fighting them. For most players, it's going to be giant crab spider thing, giant troll, or giant laser shooting tank. Mostly, fights boil down to dodging projectiles, staying out of no-no areas, or jumping over stuff like a ring of fire. Everything just feels pretty generic. It's not terrible content, and with the right group of people, the Temple of the Scar can actually be a blast, but only again in moderation. I wouldn't want to play any of these dungeons more than a few times, as they get stale pretty quick. As do the contracts and daily missions, which you can pick up in Fort Fartsis. Again, they play out like any other piece of content in Anthem, and given that quick play is the easiest option to jump into a mission, they kinda all start to blend together really quick. A few of them are great, but again, replaying them for the 10th time on a harder difficulty doesn't exactly scream exciting.
That's one. Good. Keep going.
I guess we can expect a lot of repetition, as Anthem is primarily a looter shooter, but this isn't Warframe here. Players are forking out $60 for a game today, and in my opinion, that transaction should come with an appropriate amount of content, both in quality and how those experiences play out. But while mechanical gunplay is fun, the way at which you play Anthem leaves a lot to be desired. Most of the time, quests, missions, contracts, or just about any piece of non-dungeon content in Anthem boils down to the exact same process. Go here, pick up something, bring it back, and then do it 3 more times in 3 different areas, and then teleport back to Fort Fartsis.
And we're in.
Likewise in Strongholds, it's go here or wait here, grab an orb, kill a wave of enemies, and do it until the timer runs out. The allure, it starts to wear off from a variety standpoint, especially considering none of the Strongholds have any procedural generation, explorability, or complex game mechanics. I guess this is why AFK farming to level cap is actually a thing in Anthem right now. No, I'm not joking. Thankfully, Javelin combat works out pretty well, and each feels distinct in playstyle. The hulking Colossus is essentially the tank who can shield and taunt enemies. The Ranger, he's the typical soldier, and the Interceptor and Storm filling the roles of lightweight DPS. With randos, there's not much synergy going on though, but players are forced to play organized when going into the harder difficulties. Once they add the healing class later on, which I believe is guaranteed at this point, it will flesh out team dynamics even more. Anthem is simply one of those games that is built for a specific gamer, and if you're not in that club, the game will not win you over. I was looking for a nice middle ground of BioWare story and grindy shooter, and I mostly got the latter. It's similar to Warframe in the sense that it's a lot about the gear grind with a lot of repetition. Unfortunately, there's a lack in overall content here to make it digestible like Warframe. Upon completing the campaign, players will not be level capped, so they will have to repeat missions they've done before or complete Strongholds on repeat. Side content, it's lacking, both in terms of narrative mechanisms and overall quantity, so if you're looking to pick up Anthem, just know you're going to be flying through similar content all the time. Thankfully, in free play, you can complete world events for EXP, and exploration is, for the most part, wonderful, until you've seen all that the surprisingly small world of Anthem has to offer. There is a fully fleshed out crafting and consumable system in addition to collectibles and achievements to keep you interested, which does encourage players to hop into free play mode for exploration. I was just hoping that these systems would underpin a much more exciting game. Anthem feels like a game that's going to be good next year when more content is available to supplement its otherwise really great shooting. The story is bad, and BioWare can do a lot better. My guess is that they were forced by EA to focus on world building and graphics, Anthem's two best features. However, the future actually may fill in those holes, especially when cataclysms come in, which hopefully will mimic the excitement offered in sort of a raid in other games like Destiny. There's also going to be guilds added, leaderboards, and a full update coming in March. And with a developer presence on Reddit actively answering questions, it's nice to at least see that they're being active in the community already. So who knows? Perhaps Anthem will be far better than it is today, not too far from now. Still, I would hold off buying Anthem in the meantime. It's a mixed bag. There's also a host of other problems more mainstream that I didn't talk about, including bugs. You're going to experience those a lot. No field of view slider, no text chat, which weren't major issues, but at least worth noting. But as a total package, regardless of how much I wanted to love the game, and believe me, I did, I find it to be one of the more disappointing titles of the year. Thanks for watching, guys. I know this video primarily focused on the story elements and didn't really touch too much on what's going on late game because, as I said earlier, I will be providing another video very soon when I get to those experiences. So if you played Anthem or have some opinions on the game, I'd love to hear them. Just leave them down below in the comment section. See you guys. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.